morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Vasil Dikov. I am a senior account manager with GDMFX, and I'll be bringing you today's market outlook. We'll start with the North American markets. We had the 10-year note auction, which came out 0.008% less than the previous at 1.702%. The housing starts seasonally adjusted from Canada 4th-year were 0.4 points weaker than expected at 188.6 thousand. The Dow was 6 points up, closed above the psychologically important 18,000 for the first time in over a month. The Nasdaq moved sideways. The DXY was down to 93.52 from 93.72. The US dollar was 70 pips down versus the Canadian dollar, 75 pips down versus the Swiss franc, and 60 pips down versus the Japanese yen. Today we're going to have the Bank of Canada Governor Poloz give out a speech, the Bank of Canada review, and the initial jobless claims. Moving on to the European Union and the European markets, we had the Swiss CPI for the year came out with minus 0.4%. The CPI for the month was 0.1% weaker than expected at 0.2%. The German trade balance was 24.04 billion euro. The German exports were at 0%. The German imports at minus 0.2%. The current account for Germany was 28.8 billion euro. Mario Draghi is also going to be giving out a speech today. The euro was 47 pips up versus the US dollar. For the remaining part of the week, we're going to have the German Wholesale Price Index, Harmonized Index of Consumer Prices for the year and the month, German CPI year-on-year and month-to-month, and the BUBA President Weidmann is going to give a speech. Now, moving on to the UK, the manufacturing production for the month was 2.3% better than expected, 2.3%. Manufacturing production for the year, 2.3% better than expected, 0.8%. Industrial production for the month, 2% better than expected at 2%. And industrial production for the year, 2% better than expected at 1.6%. We also had the NISR GDP estimate, 0.1% better than expected at 0.5%. And the RICS housing price balance 16% worse than expected at 19%. Now, the UK industrial production had its biggest monthly gains since 2012, data showed yesterday. The industrial fuel jumped with 2.3% in April. The manufacturing data was equally impressive. However, this did little to boost the investors' interest in buying the pound. Sterling remained unchanged versus the dollar despite the positive data, which shows just how much everyone is focused on the Brexit at this point of time. The FTSE 100 gained 31 points, it closed at 6,289. The pound was 135 pips down versus the Japanese yen with 145 pips range, 170 pips down versus the Australian dollar, 225 pips range, versus the Canadian dollar, 140 pips down, 170 pips range, versus the Kiwi, the New Zealand dollar, 555 pips down yesterday, 630 pips range. And versus the Swiss franc, 125 pips down with a range of 145. Today we're going to have the goods trade balance, total trade balance, non-EU from the UK. We proceed with the Asian markets. The Japanese Eco-Watch survey outlook came out at 47.3. The Eco-Watch survey current came out at 43. We also had the foreign investments in Japan stock for June the 3rd, 175.3 billion yen, unchanged reading there. And the foreign bond investments from Japan, 549.4 billion yen, again no change. And Japanese stocks fell by the most in a month, and the yen strengthened after Prime Minister Shinzo Abe held back on a widely expected fiscal stimulus package, oil retreated, and the euro rose before Vienna meetings and the OPEC and the European central banks. So basically, the Japanese yen was, the Nikkei was 260 pips down. The New Zealand versus the Japanese yen was 150 pips up. Moving on to the Pacific section of the market. In Australia, we had the home loans at 1.7%. And from Australia, investment lending for homes was minus 5%. We had the interest rate decision from the New Zealand Central Bank, 2.25% unchanged there. And we had the Australian exports at 3% less than the previous at 1%. So New Zealand Central Bank left the benchmark interest rate unchanged for a second straight meeting, saying it expects inflation to accelerate and it's worried about the resurgence in house prices. The currency surged to a 12-month high. Governor Wheeler expects inflation to reach the midpoint of his 1 to 3% target band earlier than previously projected, giving him scope to delay further monetary easing so he can gauge the impact of a spreading housing boom on consumer spending and economic growth. The risk is that waiting could further boost the New Zealand dollar and damp import prices, making attainment of his goal even harder. The Kiwi was 175 pips up versus the US dollar, 335 pips up versus the euro, and 195 pips up versus the Australian dollar. And moving on to the commodities, the EIA crude oil stock exchange fell by 3.2 million barrels in the week ended June 3rd. Gold rose sharply on Wednesday as the prices of hiring by US employers in April decelerated to a 2-year low in April, pushing the dollar down to freshly month lows and potentially lower the probability of a summer interest rate hike from the Federal Reserve. Silver for July delivery soared 0.621 cents or 3.79% to $17.15 an ounce, eclipsing $17 for the first time in 3 weeks. Oil futures extended gains in North America trade on Wednesday to hit a fresh 11-month high after data showed that oil supplies in the US fell more than expected last week. US crude futures have skyrocketed more than 90% since hitting 13-year low at 26.05 cents barrel on February the 11th. And the S&P 500 index had a range of 14 points. It is 2,115 right now. Gold had a range of $23 up to $1,261 right now. Silver had a range of 63 cents at $17.19 right now. Crude had a $1.30 range at 51.48 right now. Natural gas is trading at 2.45 at the moment with a range of 5 cents. Thursday we're going to have the natural gas storage exchange. Thank you. That is all for me and have a nice day.